a classic work unveiling the power struggles of ancient China. Why is it considered the pinnacle of Wei-Jin historical studies? Tian Yuqing, with meticulous research and profound insights, unlocks the secrets behind the rise and fall of the Eastern Jin Dynasty over a century. Let us step into this history where aristocratic families and imperial power dance together, exploring the mysteries and lessons of aristocratic politics. The Overture of a Chaotic Era, the power stage of the Eastern Jin. In 317 CE, Emperor Yuan of Jin, Sima Rui, re-established the Jin dynasty in Jiangkong, marking the beginning of the Eastern Jin's century-long history. However, this was not an era where the emperor held absolute power, but a unique stage of shared governance between the imperial house and aristocratic families. In The Politics of the Eastern Jin Aristocratic Families, Tian Yuqing argues that the Eastern Jin's power structure stemmed from the turmoil of the late Western Jin. The Eight Princes' rebellion tore apart the Central Plains, and the Yongjia exodus forced the imperial house and aristocrats to migrate south to Jiangzhou, forming a distinctive aristocratic politics. This was not a Western-style aristocracy, but a distorted form of imperial power in a chaotic era, with aristocrats and the emperor maintaining a fragile balance. How could a weakened imperial house sustain itself for a century? Tian Yuqing uses the Langya Wang clan as an example to reveal the origins of aristocratic politics. In the late Western Jin, the Prince of Dongye, Sima Yue, relied on the Wang brothers, Wang Yan and Wang Dao, to stabilize the situation, laying the foundation for the Wangs and the Simas ruling together. After the southern migration, Sima Rui ascended the throne in Jiangkong, facing uprisings of displaced people and exclusion from local Wu surnamed aristocrats, relying heavily on Wang Dao's administrative talent and network. Wang Dao not only united the northern Uyghur aristocrats, but also mediated conflicts with local Wu aristocrats, fostering a co-governance model. Tian cites an anecdote from a new account of the Tales of the World. When Wang Dao first established himself in Jiangkong, Wu aristocrats spied on him with suspicion. Yet Wang Dao, with an open demeanor, dispelled their mistrust, showcasing the political wisdom of the aristocracy. Wang Dao's wisdom was not only in resolving the Wu aristocrats' suspicions, but also in his skillful handling of displaced populations. Tian Yuqing analyzes that Wang Dao recognized the displaced people as a key force in stabilizing the Eastern Jin regime, implementing the Uyghur province and county policy. This policy integrated displaced people into the administrative system, providing both labor and military resources. The design of this policy demonstrated Wang Dao's exceptional ability to balance interests in a chaotic era. For example, the Book of Jin records that Wang Dao personally met with leaders of the displaced, promising tax exemptions to secure their loyalty. This move not only stabilized the Jiangnan region, but also won public support for the imperial house. Tian further notes that Wang Dao's strategy was not mere benevolence but an institutionalized approach that transformed the potential threat of displaced people into a pillar of the regime. This approach bears similarities to the 17th century English enclosure movement. Imagine an English squire named Thomas Wilson, who, during the enclosure movement, negotiated land distribution with tenant farmers to quell potential uprisings, much like Wang Dao's tactics. The difference lies in Wang Dao facing displaced groups with both cultural and regional divides, presenting a more complex challenge. This institutionalized balance reflects the uniqueness of Eastern Jin aristocratic politics and set the stage for the rise of the Beifu army. This balance was not accidental. Tian Yuqing analyzes that the foundation of aristocratic politics rested on the interplay of three forces: the legitimacy of imperial power, the administrative authority of aristocrats, and the military might of displaced leaders. Though Sima Rui was the common lord, real power lay with the aristocrats, while figures like Cai Jian provided military support. This pseudo-balance was like walking a tightrope, vulnerable to collapse at the slightest misstep. Tian further notes that the formation of aristocratic politics was inseparable from the unique circumstances following the southern migration. After losing their land bases in the Central Plains, northern aristocrats relied on imperial power for political resources, while the imperial house needed their governance skills to stabilize Jiangnan. This mutual dependence shaped the unique political ecosystem of the Eastern Jin. Consider 16th century Italian city-states, where a noble leader named Marco Vittorio, facing a weakened papal authority, might have united Florence's merchants and mercenaries through family networks to form a temporary alliance. This mirrors Wang Dao's role as both a power broker and a mediator of competing interests. However, Wang Dao had to navigate the complex tensions between displaced people and Wu aristocrats, demonstrating even greater political acumen. This cross-era comparison highlights both the universality and uniqueness of aristocratic politics in chaotic times. Tian Yuqing also emphasizes that the formation of aristocratic politics was not instantaneous. After the Eight Princes Rebellion, the Sima imperial authority was all but extinct, and Sima Rui's enthronement was almost a parachuted arrival in Jiangnan, lacking a foundation. This parachuted situation stemmed from the collapse of the Western Jin's political structure. Tian Yuqing analyzes that the Eight Princes Rebellion not only weakened imperial power, but also destroyed the land bases of Central Plains aristocrats, forcing them to seek new opportunities in the south. The Book of Jin records, during the Yongjia chaos, scholars and commoners fled south, and the elite all crossed to the south. Migrant aristocrats like the Wang and Zi clans brought Central Plains culture and political experience, but having lost their economic foundations, had to rely on the imperial house. Tian notes that Sima Rui's enthronement depended on Wang Dao's borrowing strength to strike. Through marriages and compromises with Wu aristocrats, Wang Dao secured a foothold for the imperial house. This strategy resembles that of the 15th century Ottoman Sultan Murad II. Murad, while reclaiming lost territories, relied on local nobles' support to rebuild the regime, securing loyalty through marriages and rewards. However, Wang Dao also faced military pressures from displaced populations, making his political balancing act more complex. This multifaceted power struggle laid the groundwork for the fragility and uniqueness of Eastern Jin aristocratic politics. The Book of Jin records, when Emperor Yuan first crossed south, the people of Jiangdong were not yet loyal. Through marriages and official appointments, Wang Dao bound migrant aristocrats to the imperial house, forming a power network centered in Jiangkang. However, this network was not monolithic, as internal factional struggles among aristocrats and external military threats constantly tested this fragile co-governance model. The geographic chessboard, power struggles between upstream and downstream. The Eastern Jin's political stage extended beyond the court to the geographic layout of the Yangtze River Basin. Tian Yuqing introduces a geopolitical perspective, dividing Eastern Jin power into upstream and downstream factions. Upstream Jinzhou and Jiangsu was a military stronghold controlling armed forces, while downstream Jiangkang and Jinku was the political hub, managing administration. The rise and fall of aristocratic families often depended on their moves in this chess game. Take the Wang Dun rebellion as an example. Wang Dun, a military leader of the Langya Wang clan, stationed in upstream Wuqing, sought to challenge Sima Rui's authority. Under the pretext of clearing the emperor's side, he marched on Jiangkang but failed due to internal conflicts. Tian's research reveals that Wang Dun's rebellion was not merely personal ambition, but a structural conflict between upstream military power and the downstream political core. The Book of Jin records, Wang Dun, holding military power in Jinzhou, intimidated the court. His failure stemmed from Wang Dao's mediation and the support of displaced leaders, highlighting the complex interplay within the aristocracy. Similarly, Huan Wen's later northern expeditions and attempts at usurpation, driven by his control of upstream military power, sparked imperial suspicion. Tian cites, when Huan Wen entered the court, officials trembled in fear, vividly illustrating the upstream's dominance over Jiangkang. For deeper understanding, consider a Roman noble named Lucius Brandon. In the 3rd century, Roman provincial warlords often threatened the central authority with border legions, much like Wang Dun's actions. If Lucius controlled Gaul's legions, he might march on Rome under the guise of restoring order, only to fail due to factional splits. This analogy underscores the universality of Eastern Jin aristocratic politics. The struggle between local and central powers remains a perennial challenge in imperial structures. Tian Yuqing further analyzes that the upstream-downstream conflict stemmed from the Eastern Jin's geographic division. Jinzhou, as a military stronghold, controlled the Yangtze's upstream grain and troops, while Jiangkang, the political center, relied on downstream wealth and cultural resources. This geographic imbalance created inherent tensions in power distribution. Tian also highlights Jinku's role as a downstream stronghold, serving as a barrier. Jinku's strategic importance lay not only in its location, but also as a nexus for displaced people and aristocrats. Tian Yuqing details that Jinku, situated at the lower Yangtze, linked Jiangkang to the northern front, serving as both a military fortress against northern tribes and a settlement hub for displaced populations. Cai Jian, stationed there, trained displaced people into armies, bolstering Eastern Jin's defenses and politically curbing upstream aristocrats' expansion. A new account of the Tales of the World records that Cai Jian, in plain attire, inspected Jinku to understand the displaced people's hardships, crafting flexible conscription policies to earn their loyalty. This people-centric approach resembles that of 14th-century Venetian naval commander Andrea Dandolo. Andrea reformed sailor recruitment to strengthen Venice's naval power, akin to Cai Jian's integration of displaced people. Tian emphasizes Jinku's dual role as both a military barrier and a testing ground for social integration. The militarization of displaced people in Jinku not only provided troops for the Battle of Feiyu River, but also laid the foundation for Liu Yu's Beifu army. However, Jinku's rise also created new tensions. The growing power of displaced leaders began to threaten the aristocrats' administrative dominance. The subtle tension reflects the complexity of Eastern Jin's geopolitical dynamics and foreshadowed the end of aristocratic politics. Cai Jian's governance of Jinku not only countered northern tribes, but also balanced the military pressures from upstream aristocrats. A new account of the Tales of the World notes that Cai Jian, though stern and upright, skillfully mediated conflicts between Wang Dao and Tao Can, highlighting the critical role of displaced leaders in the geographic chess game. This geographic perspective not only reveals the dynamic balance of Eastern Jin politics, but also offers a new lens for understanding the rise and fall of aristocratic families. Furthermore, through detailed geopolitical analysis, Tian Yuqing explains why the Eastern Jin struggled to succeed in northern expeditions. Northern expeditions were not just military campaigns, but also pretexts for aristocrats to vie for military power. Huan Wen's 3 northern expeditions recaptured Luoyang, but failed due to logistical shortages and internal constraints. This mirrors the 14th-century Byzantine Empire, where Emperor John V sought to reclaim lost territories, but was hindered by internal noble conflicts. The upstream-downstream struggle in the Eastern Jin reflects the broader challenge of decentralized power in chaotic times. The rise and fall of aristocratic families. The dance of power. The core of aristocratic politics lies in the rise and fall of aristocratic families. Tian Yuqing traces the fortunes of 5 major Uyghur aristocratic families, painting a vivid picture of their power dance. Each family's trajectory reflects the internal logic of aristocratic politics. The Langya Wang clan marked the beginning. Wang Dao, by assisting Sima Rui, established the Wang and Sima co-rule, but Wang Dun's rebellion fractured the family, leading to its gradual decline. Tian's research shows that Wang Dao's success lay in his harmonious and unassuming political finesse, integrating Uyghur and Wu aristocrats through marriages and official appointments. However, Wang Dun's military gambit exposed cracks within the aristocracy. A new account of the Tales of the World records Wang Dao lamenting after Wang Dun's defeat, "My brother has ruined me." This was not just personal regret, but a foreshadowing of the Wang clan's decline. The Yingquan Yu clan took the stage next, but Yu Liang's dominance faltered due to the Jiangsu dispute. Yu Liang sought to control upstream military power, challenging the imperial house, but his lack of Wang Dao's finesse led to failure. Tian analyzes that the Yu clan's decline reflects a crisis for ascendant aristocrats. Excessive power inevitably provoked imperial backlash. The Chaoguo Huan clan, led by the ambitious Huan Wen, controlled Jinzhou and aimed to usurp the throne through northern expeditions. The Book of Jin records, Huan Wen's authority grew daily, causing the emperor great distress. His failure stemmed from internal factional constraints and imperial vigilance, marking both the peak and turning point of aristocratic politics. The Chenjun Zi clan, led by Zi En, presented the zenith. The Battle of Fei River, where they repelled former Qin's million-strong army, showcased the military prowess of the aristocracy. Tian cites a new account of the Tales of the World. Zi En remained calm and composed before the battle, yet privately worried about his family's future, reflecting the fragility behind aristocratic glory. Zi-En's complex mindset mirrors the internal crisis of aristocratic families at their peak. Tian Yuqing deeply analyzes that Zi-En's success in the Battle of Fei River relied not only on his strategic vision, but also on close collaboration with Beifu Army General Zi Zuan. Zi Zuan, a Zi clan member, trained the Beifu army into an elite force. The Book of Jin records, Zi Zuan selected elite soldiers, named the Beifu invincible in battle. Tian notes that the Zi and Zi Zuan partnership briefly fused aristocratic political and military power. However, this fusion exposed the aristocracy's limitations. While they could temporarily control military forces, they lacked a lasting military foundation. Zi En, aware that the Beifu army's rise could undermine the aristocracy, deliberately kept a low-profile post-war to avoid imperial suspicion. Tian cites an anecdote. At a post-war banquet, Zi-En responded to subordinates' praise with "just by luck," revealing his concern for the family's future. This caution resembles 16th-century Japanese warlord Oda Nobunaga. Oda unified Japan with vassal military support, but remained wary of their growing power, ultimately falling to a subordinate's rebellion. Zi-En's situation, though less dire, reflects the fragility of aristocratic politics. Their military ventures paved the way for the rise of lower status figures. Tian further analyzes that the Zi clan's decline was also tied to internal succession issues. Zi-En's descendants lacked his political and military acumen, leading to a swift erosion of family influence. This phenomenon was common in aristocratic politics, highlighting their reliance on individual charisma rather than institutionalized power. The Taiyuan Wang clan, as a secondary aristocratic family, relied on imperial favor, but waned due to a lack of foundation. Tian Yuqing emphasizes that the rise and fall of aristocratic families stemmed from the imbalance of the three-legged tripod. Aristocrats depended on imperial legitimacy, but excessive power threatened the throne, triggering countermeasures. Conversely, an overly strong imperial house could suppress the aristocracy, ending aristocratic politics. Consider a modern company where an entrepreneur named Elena Carter founds a tech firm, retaining the CEO title, but delegating operations to a professional management team. Initially, collaboration is smooth, but as managers gain power, the CEO introduces new shareholders to restore balance. Similarly, the Eastern Jin Imperial House used displaced leaders to counterbalance powerful aristocrats, maintaining a dynamic equilibrium. One also deeply analyzes the internal stratification of aristocratic families. High-ranking clans like the Wang and Zi enjoyed privileges, while secondary clans like Liu Yu rose through military achievements. This stratification intensified the internal contradictions of aristocratic politics, paving the way for the Liu Song dynasty. The military pillar, displaced leaders, and the Beifu army. The sustenance of aristocratic politics relied heavily on military forces, with displaced leaders and the Beifu army playing pivotal roles. Tian Yuqing notes that the Eastern Jin's military system diverged from the Western Jin's hereditary soldier system, relying more on the martial prowess of displaced people and secondary aristocrats. Displaced leaders like Cai Jian and Tao Can not only provided troops, but also acted as balancers in power struggles. Take Cai Jian, who rose from humble origins, but, through military talent, governed Jinku, becoming a downstream stronghold. Tian's research shows that Cai Jian supported the imperial house during the Wang Dun rebellion, stabilizing the situation, and later turned the tide in the Su Jun rebellion. The Book of Jin records, Cai Jian, with a lone army, defeated Su Jun, his contributions unparalleled. His success stemmed from his ability to organize displaced people and his loyalty to the imperial house. Similarly, Tao Can, another displaced leader, rose to prominence by quelling rebellions, but faced exclusion from Wu aristocrats, leaving him unfulfilled. The rise of the Beifu army was even more critical. Liu Yu, based in Jinku, formed the Beifu army, defeated the Sun in uprising, and ultimately overthrew the aristocracy to establish the Liu Song dynasty. Tian cites the Book of Jin. Liu Yu, rising from humble origins, commanded elite troops and brave generals. The Beifu army's success lay in its independence, not relying on aristocratic patronage like Sun En, but on the cohesion of secondary aristocrats. This resembles 15th-century French general Joan of Arc, who, as a peasant girl, turned the tide of the Anglo-French War through folk faith and organizational strength. Unlike Joan, Liu Yu's rise directly reshaped the Eastern Jin's political landscape. Tian Yuqing further analyzes that the rise of displaced leaders and the Beifu army exposed the structural flaws of aristocratic politics. While aristocrats controlled administration, they distanced themselves from military power, allowing displaced people and secondary aristocrats to become imperial allies. This shift in military power ultimately broke the aristocratic balance, paving the way for imperial restoration. Tian also notes that the Beifu army's rise was closely tied to the Eastern Jin's migration policies. These policies were not just administrative tools, but the social foundation of aristocratic politics. Tian Yuqing analyzes that after the Yongji exodus, massive displaced populations flooded Jiangnan, leading to the unique Migar province and county system. These Migar provinces and counties, named after northern locales like Southern Yanzhou, preserved the displaced people's homeland identity while facilitating imperial control. The Book of Jin records, After the southern migration, Emperor Yuan established Migrant counties to soothe their homesick hearts. Tian points out that this system, while ostensibly pacifying displaced people, effectively brought potential unrest under imperial control. However, the militarized potential of displaced people exceeded aristocratic expectations. Leaders like Tao Can, by organizing displaced armies, not only quelled internal revolts, but also played key roles in northern expeditions. Tian cites Tao Can's example. While serving in Guangzhou, he personally trained displaced people into an elite naval force. This parallels the 13th century Mongol Empire's Han army system. The Mongol Khans bolstered their conquests by incorporating Han Chinese troops, but this also sowed seeds of local rebellion. Similarly, Eastern Jin's displaced leaders, while stabilizing the regime, provided fertile ground for Liu Yu's rise. This double-edged effect of migration policies underscores the complexity of aristocratic politics and social governance. After the Yongjia exodus, displaced people were integrated into Migrant provinces and counties, serving as both labor and military resources. While this policy temporarily stabilized the regime, it also laid the groundwork for Liu Yu's ascent. The institutional core, the 9-rank system and co-governance logic. The institutional foundation of aristocratic politics lay in the 9-rank system and the logic of imperial aristocratic co-governance. Tian Yuqing analyzes that the 9-rank system, originally designed for talent selection, evolved in the Eastern Jin into a tool for aristocratic monopoly over official posts. High-ranking aristocratic offspring entered office without examinations, creating a situation where the highest ranks had no commoners. However, this was not mere privilege allocation, but a delicate balance between imperial power and the aristocracy. How did the 9-rank system operate? Tian cites historical records. Rank evaluators, appointed from aristocratic families, favored high-ranking clans, making it nearly impossible for commoners to enter the power core. This system secured aristocratic administrative power, but planted seeds of discontent among secondary aristocrats and displaced people, fueling Liu Yu's rise. The Book of Jin records, the 9-rank system allowed noble clans to occupy high positions, leaving no path for commoners. Tian further notes that the system's rigidity stifled social mobility, contributing to the ossification of aristocratic politics. The co-governance logic was embodied in the phrase, sacrifices to the Saimas, governance to the aristocrats. The emperor retained ritual authority, while aristocrats controlled actual governance. This division seemed stable, but was fraught with crises due to mutual distrust. Tian Yuqing uses Wang Dao and Sima Rua's partnership as an example. Wang Dao used gentle persuasion to dispel imperial suspicions. However, this balance relied on personal charisma, and when successors like Yu Liang lacked such finesse, tensions surfaced. Consider a modern analogy. A foundation chairman named James Howard delegates management to a professional team. The team is efficient, but gradually sidelines the chairman, leading to internal factional struggles. Similarly, the Eastern Jin imperial house co-governed with aristocrats through the 9-rank system, but its rigidity sowed seeds of division. Tian also analyzes the cultural roots of this co-governance logic. Confucianism's emphasis on ritual governance provided legitimacy for aristocratic privileges. The emperor's son of heaven status maintained symbolic unity. Confucian ritual governance not only justified aristocratic privileges, but also shaped the Eastern Jin's political culture. Tian Yuqing notes that aristocrats reinforced their cultural superiority through philosophical discussions and rituals. For example, a new account of the tales of the world records that aristocratic youths often showcase their talents through philosophical debates, such as Zi-En's dialogues with Wang Ziji on metaphysics and governance. These cultural activities were not mere entertainment, but a form of political capital accumulation. Aristocrats built social networks through philosophical discussions, solidifying their status in the nine-rank system. However, this cultural superiority widened the gap between aristocrats, commoners, and displaced people. Tian analyzes that Confucianism's overemphasis on ritual governance led aristocrats to neglect practical military and economic needs, creating space for figures like Liu Yu to rise. This cultural institutional tension reflects the inherent contradictions of aristocratic politics. Tian Yuqing also explores the nine-rank system's profound impact on Eastern Jin's political culture. Through marriages and official careers, aristocrats formed a closed elite network. This network not only consolidated aristocratic status, but also shaped Eastern Jin's aesthetics and values, such as philosophical debates and calligraphy. While this cultural atmosphere fostered artistic flourishing, it also distanced aristocrats from reality, foreshadowing their decline. Cultural fusion, the clash of Migar and Wu aristocrats. The Eastern Jin was not only a stage for political struggles, but also a crucible for cultural fusion. Tian Yuqing focuses on the interactions between Migar and Wu aristocrats. Migar aristocrats brought Central Plains culture, emphasizing rituals and Confucianism, while Wu aristocrats, rooted in Jiangnan, valued practicality and local customs. The two groups cooperated, but also harbored mutual suspicions. Tian cites the Lanting Gathering story from a new account of the Tales of the World. Wang Ziji hosted a streamside poetry event, but Wu aristocrats participated with reservations, reflecting the challenges of cultural integration. Another anecdote involves Wang Dao's dialogue with Wu aristocrats, where he used elegance to diffuse hostility, fostering cooperation. This cultural fusion not only facilitated compromises among aristocrats, but also fueled Eastern Jin's cultural prosperity, such as the rise of calligraphy and literature. A new account of the Tales of the World records Wang Ziji's calligraphy, with its clear and vigorous style. The Lanting preface was not only a calligraphic masterpiece, but also a symbol of cultural fusion between Migar and Wu aristocrats. This can be likened to the 16th century Italian Renaissance, where Florence's local families and foreign scholars clashed, sparking a flourishing of art and thought. Though the Eastern Jin's Migar and Wu aristocrats conflicted, they achieved cultural coexistence under imperial mediation. Tian Yuqing further analyzes that this fusion extended to religion and philosophy. Buddhism, introduced from the Western regions, intertwined with Taoism and Confucianism, fostering a trend of metaphysical discussions. Aristocrats like Zi-En, skilled in governance, also engaged in philosophical debates, reflecting Eastern Jin's cultural diversity. Tian also notes that cultural fusion was crucial to sustaining aristocratic politics. The collaboration between Migar and Wu aristocrats eased regional tensions, providing a stable governance foundation for the imperial house. This fusion also manifested in religious dissemination and philosophical trends. Tian Yuqing analyzes that Buddhism offered aristocrats new intellectual resources, with metaphysical discussions serving as a bridge between Migar and Wu aristocrats. A new account of the Tales of the World records Zi-En's debates with monk Zi Dun on Zhuangzi and Buddhist principles, showcasing aristocratic openness to diverse cultures. Tian points out that this intellectual fusion not only enriched Eastern Jin's cultural landscape, but also injected stability into aristocratic politics. For example, Wang Dao, by funding Buddhist temples, gained the support of Wu aristocrats and displaced people, strengthening the regime's foundation. This resembles 16th century French King Henry IV, who eased Protestant Catholic tensions through the Edict of Nantes. However, Eastern Jin's religious fusion relied more on aristocratic charisma than institutionalized arrangements, making it less enduring. Yet, this fusion also brought challenges. Wu aristocrats often resented the refined culture of Uyghur aristocrats, who in turn viewed Wu aristocrats as crude. This psychological divide, evident in the Sun and Uprising, where Wu aristocrats showed indifference to displaced people, weakened aristocratic cohesion. Historical echoes, lessons from aristocratic politics. Why did Eastern Jin aristocratic politics last only one dynasty? Tian Yuqing concludes that it was a transitional form of imperial politics in chaotic times, inherently short-lived. After the Battle of Fei River, aristocratic military prowess peaked, but Liu Yu's rise marked the resurgence of secondary aristocrats and displaced people, restoring imperial autocracy. Tian writes, aristocratic politics was not an aristocracy but a distortion of imperial power. This clarifies the differences between Chinese and Western political systems and reveals the fragility of power balances. Tian Yuqing's methodology, zooming in on details while blending empirical research with speculative insight, provides a key to understanding history. Through meticulous analysis of sources like A New Account of the Tales of the World and the Book of Jin, he unveils the dynamic process of aristocratic politics. For instance, he analyzes the failure of Huanzhuan's usurpation, attributing it not only to military defeat but also to the centrifugal tendencies within the aristocracy. This nuanced analysis showcases the allure of Tian's historiography. What lessons does it offer for today? Aristocratic politics resembles the tides of a power ecosystem, its ebb and flow reflecting the interplay of institutions and human nature. In corporate management, over-reliance on a single group can lead to imbalance. In societal governance, balancing elites and the masses is equally critical. Tian's analysis also reminds us that history's complexity arises from the accumulation of details. Whether Wang Dao's mediation or Liu Yu's rise, each stemmed from specific events and choices. The Eastern Jin century of rise and fall is a symphony of power and wisdom. Tian Yuqing's The Politics of the Eastern Jin Aristocratic Families shows us that, though fleeting, the balance in chaotic times nurtured the seeds of culture. Standing at the crossroads of history, can you feel the tides of power still echoing today?